play is actually as equal a powerful force as love. And it is actually as critical as love in the growth and development of a child. It is important for all of us, but more so in those 7 years. And in North America, I don't pretend to know what's happening in Romania, but in North America, there's a war on play. There's a battle for play to preserve it. And I am a developmentalist, which means that play is sacred to a developmentalist, because all growth as a separate self, as an adaptive self, actually comes from play. I was once asked on a podcast, who was the most influential person in who you became in the work that you did? And I answered, it wasn't a who, it was a what. It was the capacity to play. That shaped me, that transformed me. And I'll explain a little bit more about why that's so. I'm going to talk a little bit about the science of play. Now we have to talk about the science of play. Culture used to protect play. Now we have to protect play and become much more conscious of why it is so critical for our children and also for us. I'm going to talk about the definition of play, the types of play, the role that it plays in development, the 5 top roles that it plays. I could give you 50. And of course, the very important role that each of you play to protect play. And so that's how we're going to go in a very short order. We are losing the space to play. We know that through the research right now, that we're losing at about 12 hours a week, our kids. A lot of that is outdoor time. The research in the US suggests that's because kids are shopping with their parents. 168% increase in kids shopping with parents. There's less outdoor time. 71% less outdoor time. And of course, this has increased mental health issues as well. We see a direct correlation between ADHD, depression, anxiety as our capacity to play has dropped. And so we're not putting the pieces together. The science is all there. Free, unstructured time, the type of play that you would see outside in past generations. When COVID hit, you didn't see that. The parks were not full of kids. They were in front of screens. And that did not serve them well. At a time when we needed our play, it was eroded. There is no such thing as boredom anymore. When I went to my mother and I'd say, I'm bored, she'd say, you can help me with housework or you can go and play. I always chose going to play. I thought that was a better option. But today, if you said that to your children, if you said to your kids, no, there's nothing to do, there's a chronic call of I'm bored, I'm bored, I'm bored. And the fact is that because we have so much stimulation, we have so much entertainment, being able to sit in boredom is actually a luxury today for many children. But the question is if we have all the science about mental health, if we know that this is important for children's development, why are we not following it? And I can tell you the reason why is that today, as parents, we are worried about how our children are going to survive in a knowledge-based economy. I was a prof at a university for 17 years, and all I did was help students come into the university, help figure out where they were to land, talk to parents, and also teach. And it is true that our children are going to enter into a knowledge-based global economy. We can't deny that. However, the problem is that when you try to push academics, it can actually backfire. There is a time and a place to work. There's a time and a place for academics, but it doesn't belong in the early years. But we don't seem to understand that. If we can figure out a way, I think, even to get into the womb to teach a child English and math, I think we'd be on our way. We need to slow down. We need to understand that there's a time and a place. And as a mother, I have 2 children now. They're 20 and 19. When I went into kindergarten with my daughter for the first time, she sat down beside someone who was reading chapter books to her. She didn't know how to read. She barely knew how to do her name. I believed in play, and I lived what I believed in, and I knew through the science. But what I saw around them was a bunch of kids who'd gone for tutoring. A lot of them knew how to read, and read very well. And I thought, my goodness, as I watched my daughter in assembly, all the other kids were reading paragraphs, and my daughter was memorizing a sentence. I thought, what have I done? And I know this. I know the science. I do this for a living. And I'm sitting there as a parent going, oh my goodness, she doesn't look very good. Is she going to make it? I remember by the time she was in grade 1, because I know the science says the brain develops around 5 to 7, which allows for the best reading comprehension to occur. And I remember in grade 1, she said to me, Mommy, I'm the only person in the class who doesn't know how to read. and just said, keep trying, it will come. I can tell you, by grade 7, she was one of the few kids in her class who still read books. Why? Because she got there on her terms. She fell in love with books on her terms. When I would speak to the librarians at the university, they would tell me, Deb, everybody says in the research, when you read it, that kids who are the best readers have one thing in common. They have homes where there's a lot of books. You don't need to push things. It will come if you do your job. But we become pushers, and our children are paying the consequence for that. True play should be actually put on the endangered list. It would be quite appropriate, because we don't understand it and we don't protect it. But the definition of play is really interesting. What is true play? Is a video game play? There's 7 characteristics of play. The first is that it's not work. You don't have to do it. There's no outcomes to it. No one's sitting there saying, did you get to the end? Grading it, wondering, how good is this piece of work? It's also engaging. It holds your attention. You will go into play mode and you will actually you'll lose sense of time. How many of you, if you're in the shower or gardening, all of a sudden the work problems you have, just suddenly you have the idea and the answer to it? Why? Because play is actually an activated rest state in the brain. And the impulse and the instinct to play is deeply rooted in the brain. In fact, it is in the brainstem right beside the instinct to breathe. Right? Think about that. So it engages us. It holds our attention. It is expressive and not for real. It is also provides tons of freedom for a child to engage in the world under their own steam. Because it is not for real, there's no consequences. You can't get play wrong, right? It's okay. You can get married and divorced as many times as you want without custody agreements, alimony, anything else. You can be a chef, you can be an astronaut, all in the same 10 minutes. That's the beauty of play. So children express themselves. That's what's different from a video game. That's what's different if you give a child a piece of paper that's a coloring book with somebody else's figure on there. You want your child to have their own idea and express themselves. In North American preschools, we often say, you've got to make your mom or your dad a Mother or Father's Day card. And then we tell them it has to look like this. Your mother, either it's a pink or purple flower on the card, and that's your Mother's Day card. Come on, let's go play. That isn't play. That's work. When my kids, I said I could either hire someone to take care of you for a little bit while Mom does some work, or we could go to the store, and we can get some duct tape, right? You know duct tape? The best materials ever, duct tape. You can make anything out of duct tape. And so we went to the store. They said, we'll take the duct tape. I said, okay, so here's the deal. Here's the duct tape. Here's some rules. Do not duct tape each other. Do not duct tape the dog or anything else in this house. But otherwise, do whatever you want with the duct tape. Unless you're on fire or you're bleeding, I'm working. So all of a sudden, I hear this, like an hour or two later, I hear this little bell ringing. Mommy, mommy, they're about 8 and 6. Come to our store. So I went to the store. They said, this is our duct tape delight store. So I went in there, and they'd made purses, they'd made wallets. They had a whole array of selection of pickled duct tape wallets. My husband took one to work, and everyone's like, that's fantastic. Where'd you get that? And everybody started to put in orders for those duct tape wallets. Guests would come to the house and they said, hey, don't you know you can open up a little store and you can sell that online? And the more that people told them what they should do and how they should sell it, the more they eroded work. They eroded true play, and they made it work. And duct tape delights went into receivership and was no more. Why? Because they killed play. They made it into work. We can make anything work for our kids, and that's not what they need. See, the 3 human drives that help develop us, the first one that gets right out of the gate is attachment. Attachment is the survival instinct. It is so critical for us just even being viable as a human being. But what unfolds after that, if we do our job well and our kids attach to us, the instinct to play starts to unfold. You start to see that in a little 3-year-old. Me do, I do it myself. No. You'll start to argue, they'll tell you, the sky's purple. And you'll be like, no, it's not. You're like, yeah, it is. They're pretty sure of their own version of the truth. You start to see them emerge, and it's a beautiful thing. And then and only then does the 3rd human drive enter, which is about accomplishment. Work is important. Work is very important. But where do we start with our young children today? We're starting at work instead of starting at attachment, moving to play. Play will deliver the individual to work. In fact, play builds the brains that schools use, that employers use. But we're so busy trying to get them to work at being mature, work at being civil and social, that we are absolutely eroding the conditions for our children to realize their full human potential. And this is a great tragedy. Kids don't say to their parents, "I had a hard day, can we talk?" They say, "Can we play?" Right? That's Lawrence Cohen's quote. Can we play? Why? Because sometimes you don't have words for your experiences, and sometimes the emotions are there bubbling up after a hard day at school. You don't even know why it's difficult. All you know is all of a sudden it needs to come out. You're upset with your brother or sister, right? Mom or dad, they've been away on a business trip. They're happy to see you, and then all of a sudden the frustration comes out. So what happens is you put a little bit of play in it. You put a little bit of wrestling in it. It fosters emotional maturity. It allows for the expression to come out without injuring or wounding the relationships that matter so much to the child. It assists in healing and recovery. The best therapy for children is play therapy. I once had a client come to me and said, "I didn't know why I did this, but I hope it was okay." And she said, "I was in a really bad car accident with my 6-year-old, really bad car accident. And all she would do is talk about the car accident over and over again," right? That's a sign that a child's alarmed. So I thought, well, what am I going to do? So she said, "I remembered my aunt who was in World War II in the UK, and the bombs were dropping. And as a child," she said, "when they heard the sirens, they went inside as children to play bombs. And they all hid underneath the table, and one child would jump on the table and be the bomb. So during the bomb raids, they would play bomb." And she said her aunt said she never felt afraid one day, all the time they were playing. So she said, "I got my daughter and I put 4 chairs out in the backyard. And every day after school, I put her in the driver's seat. And I said, 'Where are we going to go today?' And we drove and we drove and we drove. And we did that for about a month. We drove to many different places. And after a month, she just stopped talking about the car accident. They never talked about the real car accident, but they played out the emotions, the trauma, whatever it was inside of her that needed expression. It came out. That's what good therapy looks like for a 6-year-old. See, all mammal species have an emotional system, but we need to take care of that emotional system. So when we were wired up with this incredible capacity to feel, nature gave us play to take care of our feelings. Emotions take care of relationships. Play takes care of emotion. And that's why you see with more screens, less outdoor play, that our children's mental health has taken a drastic decline in North America. There aren't enough counselors, therapists, psychiatrists, nor will drugs cure this problem of mental health. Play is the best medicine for our children, but we don't listen to our science. At the end of the day, what do we need to do most of all? Play is the leading edge of development. Rest is what gives rise to play, and growth will take care of itself. And so we cannot allow our children to work for love. We cannot turn our children's play into work, and we shouldn't expect them to work at growing up. All of these things will not lead to the full potential and the gifts to be realized inside of our children. We need to be patient. We need to be gardeners. We need to realize that an apple seed looks nothing like the apple tree that bears fruit. And there's a lot of stages in there that we will go through with our children. And so I'll leave you with this. This is what my daughter actually created for me. This was her book review when Rest, Play, Grow first came out in 2016. She was 12 years of age, and she looked at the title of my book. She did not read it, obviously. And she said, "To Mom from Hannah, here is what I think of resting, playing, and growing." And I guess the dog, Pippin, helped her out with his book review. She said, "Rest? Yeah, okay. Grow? Bah, no time. Play? Yes. Yes. You think nothing's happening in play. Everything's happening in play. The biggest mistake is that we could push where we need to support. The biggest mistake would not to be anchor them deeply in our relationships so that they have the wings that they need to fly and become their own people in play." Thank you very much. It's been wonderful to be with you all.